Hello, friends. I am here with one of my dearest friends. We went to school, so many years ago at the Pacific College of what was called Oriental Medicine, now Health Sciences. I'm with Dr. Ken Rosen, and we wanted to hop on and just talk about the many things, the 10,000 things, life, what brought him to Chinese medicine, whatever kind of comes through is what we are setting the intention for. And I know you are in for a treat. So without further ado, I'm going to have Ken. He's coming in from Bangkok. I'm here in San Diego, and we're going to have a conversation. Ken's going to give you just a little background of where he is, where he was, where he's going. And then we're going to see where this conversation goes from here. All right, Ken, oh my goodness, friend. So good to see you. Can you share a little bit about your story, and then let's just get into it.
Sure. Well, the way I got into Chinese medicine is how so many people do, is sort of like the wounded healer, right? And that was when I was 12 years old. I had radiation therapy and Hodgkin's disease, lymphoma, splenectomy that turned out to be negative. But the radiation therapy really caught up with me over the years with a thyroid operation, and then later on an aortic valve replacement, open heart surgery. And, this was many years after practicing. And it's been a great journey. I have no regrets doing what I've done in terms of this choice of what I've done with my life. In fact, I always tell people I'm a technician that cares. And that's what I want. In fact, I almost think like the caring is more important than the technical, but you need the technical. You need to know this point, that point, all that kind of stuff. But the caring, I think, is what I'm probably most, proud's not the right word, but I appreciate that the most in my practice of this medicine. Yeah.
And when I met you way back when, you guys were doing the bee sting therapy. I always felt that you were cutting edge. So you really embraced the ancient and the modern healing modalities. And I know that you spent a lot of time with Dr. Andrew Weil as well. And so was it Dr. Weil? Was it Weil? Did he influence you towards Chinese medicine, or was it something you found on your own? How did that happen?
No, totally the opposite, actually. Like, I got to know Dr. Weil, or Andy, as I like to call him, or most people call him. I got to know Andy when I started looking for Chinese medicine schools. And then when I was on my way up to Canada to look at my first Chinese medicine school, I stopped off by this mycologist by the name of Paul Stamets, and he cooked me mushrooms for the first time. And he seemed to be a really great guy. And then many, many years later, I would go see Andy at a book signing, and I had one of the French author books, Elisabeth Rocher Davallet. I had one of their books called Rooted in Spirit. And Andy saw that in my hand at the book signing. And Andy said, "Boy, I bet I could learn a lot from you." And I was sort of like, I felt like I could fall over in that moment, like the humility and like little student Ken, learning this stuff. Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And so, okay, so you've been in practice for a while. You and I both graduated in the late 90s, right? I was 99. I think you were 98, 99?
I graduated 2000 in New York.
Okay, that's right. So you transferred, but you're not in New York anymore. You're in Bangkok. So I'd love for you to take this conversation to where you want to take it. Maybe sharing some of your, some memories that come through. I mean, you've been in practice for over 23 years now. I'm sure you've seen a lot in your travels, in your practice. We were sharing before we hit record. You just got back from a trip where you went and, worked with a family, a group that way. And so I think you have an interesting practice model. A lot of us have a brick and mortar and everybody's coming to us, but it feels like people are flying you out or bringing you out to work with them and their loved ones and their family. I just love all of it. And I know you're like across the globe making such a huge impact in the world. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about that impact you're having.
Well, I never thought of myself as sort of one that would be traveling so much to different resorts. And of course, like when I sort of hung up the white coat in New York and I came over to Thailand to practice in a spa, and all of a sudden I was wearing doctor's pajamas. Speaking of pajamas, it was, it was a totally different thing. I mean, they weren't patients, they were guests, and it was, but I must say that I saw this incredible need for holistic acupuncture in Asia. And I know that sounds crazy, but what I saw being practiced over here, by and large, right? I'm just talking in generalities, was pretty branch treatment and not getting to the root of it. And I think I like to hope to think that what we really do as practitioners is get at the root. That's the key for me.
So interesting that you're in Asia and you're seeing more branch treatments. Do you think that's just the influence of the West and the medicine's been diluted? And so I know, we're deep into the classics and the real tradition of the medicine and delivering it that way. Do you think that's kind of where we went?
I do. I think there's something to be said for whatever quote unquote American acupuncture. Like, I think there's something to be said for that. I don't claim to be an American acupuncturist. In fact, I just trained some Thai TCM docs on the other end of town, and I said, look, this is your medicine. This is going to become your medicine. Whatever I'm going to teach you today, I don't want you to do what I do. I want you to make it yours. And I think that's really important in this world we live in. And I personally, I'm not an official student, but I became sort of an official student of Miriam Lee. And her 5 great points, right? Stomach 36, large intestine 11, spleen 6, large intestine 4, and lung 7, which I think is generally called the California tune-up. I don't know if that's real or not, but I think that story about how acupuncture getting legalized in America is very important to the whole story of acupuncture. I mean, here's this 5th generation practitioner, Miriam Lee, practicing illegally in California. And she's using those 5 points, and anything that comes into her office, she's doing those 5 points on them. It could be depression, it could be back pain, blah, blah, blah. And then she gets arrested for practicing medicine without a license. And all her clients showed up at court and said, what are you doing to this woman? She has helped us. And that's how acupuncture started getting legalized in the West. And I think that's an incredible story. Now, having said that, do I do just those 5 points on people? No. Not at all. But it's a template. It's a good template.
I had never heard that story. And so I love that. And I'm making some notes to make sure that's in the notes, that is the story of how acupuncture got legalized. She used the 5 points, the Miriam Lee. So you studied that. And so that's been years. I mean, I'm sure it's morphed. And I love how you said that you can show people how to use the medicine, but you're just a vessel, you're a channel. The medicine is etheric. The healing modality is out there in the ethers. And then we become a conduit. We put up the antenna, we receive this vast, deep, immense, beautiful information called Chinese medicine. And then we deliver it that way. So it's delivered in different ways, depending on the conduit. So I love that you said that is really powerful for people to understand, because I think a lot of people in acupuncture and different modalities follow a teacher, follow a mentor, and then want to just be exactly like them or emulate them, where it's more important to be your own conduit. I love that. So yeah, that was beautiful.
Many years ago, I guess in about 2012, I was asked by Spa China magazine about, like, how do you think a foreigner like you can practice this medicine? And I said, when I lived in New York, there was an Italian deli, and the owners of the Italian deli were Chinese, but they made the best Italian sandwiches in New York City, bar none. Well, maybe not, but very close up there, right? And I said, this is a medicine that can be learned. And it's like, going to dental school or something else. Like, it can be learned. And one of my students in the States said to me recently, she said, one of the things I love about TCM is that you never stop learning. I mean, how perfect is that? It's very true.
Yeah, yeah. I interviewed a lot of the classics, professors and leaders in our field of Chinese medicine that are presenting the classics. I interviewed them for a symposium last year because that was the theme last year, was like the classics, return to the classics. And they said the same thing. And they've been studying this medicine for 40, 50 years, practicing it, and they're still learning it. They're still unveiling it, because as we evolve, then different things channel through us, different things light up for us that we weren't aware of. Does that, that makes sense? So that kind of leads me to the next question for you is, I personally love helping people live their best life. I do. Whatever that looks like, it's going to be different for all of us. I love to be that kind of mission leader that way. So what do you think are like the secrets to living your best life? Based on all this experience and this beautiful philosophy of the way of this medicine and what we've learned and what you've been embodying for the last 20 some years, what would you say leads you to your best life?
Don't push the river. Don't push the river. That's a Richard Rohr comment, and I like that. And I think when I was working in the Maldives recently, I kept on talking to different staff and guests, and I also quoted Richard Rohr, and I said, if you approach the moment with no, it's very hard to get back to yes. And I think that sort of sums it up to me. And granted, I can still say no at a lot of different things, but I have to remind myself, like, figure out how to keep in the yes. Go with the flow. Don't push the river.
What's the river?
Well, the river is, so a lot of people sort of in holistic circles and yoga circles are talking about flow state. You probably talk about flow state. And it's good. I think it's a good thing. So the river is, the flow of life. So if you're showing up at the airport and your flight's delayed and you're pounding your fist and you're pushing the river, you got to figure out another way. In fact, just the other day, it happened to me where I was like, oh, there's no time for that. I have to change course. And the metaphor I give when I talk about the 7 emotions is that, with anger and spring, dawn, it's all the same, right? Wood, if the little sprout on the way up to the surface hits a rock, it doesn't try to grow through the rock, right? It's flexible and it learns how to get up towards the light. And I think that's true. And that's the same thing with don't push the river, I would say.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. The flow state, being in I mean, I'm starting to wonder if flow state is similar to being connected to the divine, right? We're out there.
I absolutely do. Absolutely.
Right? You're out there and you're off center. And then we have these moments, these glimpses of being completely connected to our higher self, the divine source, God, universe, whatever you call it. And time doesn't exist in this state. So we call it flow state, optimal state, peak performance, going with the river. Recently, I had said to somebody about being a big frog in a small pond and wanting to go into a bigger pond. And the person said, why go to a pond? Why not jump in a river? Jump into the river, which is the same analogy, right? So
yeah.
A lot of us look at the ponds we're in. I want to be like, grass is greener in that pond, right? Like I'd rather go over into that pond, where what we're talking about right now is getting rid of those parameters of the pond and jumping into the river, which is life, going with it. I heard Gabby Bernstein speak once, and she talked about how for years she tried to recruit people into spirituality and bring them in, which is like going against the grain. And she stopped trying to convince or convert. She just went with the grain. She said, I'm just going to speak, and I'm going to speak to the people that resonate with my message and understand, because that will amplify the message, the energy around it, and it will attract other people versus me the analogy I use all the time is like force feed a turtle, right? You don't do it. You don't hold a turtle like, here's your lettuce. you put the lettuce down and then you step back and then the turtle comes to it, right? So it's all kind of the same thing. And I do really feel that you've embodied that. You embodied it back then. I feel when we were in school, you were kind of like a wise soul. You still are. What other wisdom? I know you have a 5-year-old. And so when the time is right, you're going to start to share your wisdom with him. What is some of that wisdom that you would be sharing with your son?
Well, the other day I said to him, it's good to be good, not just to be good, not to be bad. And I think he got it, I want to circle back to this flow state thing because I think I got a bigger message for everybody here. And I hope you jive with it as well. So many years ago when I was at 5 Branches, I remember some biology teacher or something, I forget what she was teaching, but she talked about when you get an acupuncture treatment, your C fibers of the nerve cells are grabbing these foreign stimuli, right? And the grabbing would be like the dachi, right? Mm-hmm. So they're grabbing these foreign stimuli and then they're rejecting them, right? They're trying to push them out. And if you ever watch a needle in a body, right, we all sort of have and done, right? You see it shaking, right? It's shaking. And what I think, this is only my opinion, right? I think it's like it's getting you into that flow state, right? To make it a short, a long story short. But what's really happening? Those needles are shaking and your body is scanning itself. And your mind, your body, your heart, everything, your spirit is scanning itself and it's venting the static. It's venting the static, which could be called internal wind or whatever you want to call it. It could be too much time on a phone, too much scrolling. I got to feed the kids. I got to do this. I got to, it's like, and this is the world we live in. And when I used to teach nutrition in New York City at PCOM, I used to talk about how fast the world was going back then. And like now, like, holy crow, like it's off the charts in terms of like platforms and this and that. It's like, it's really something else. So the point of all that jibber jabber is that I think during an acupuncture treatment, it's that rejection process and then that it's an accepting process, right? And then you get into that flow. A good treatment should get you into that flow. And it's like, as I said to you before, it's like getting a boat on a compass heading. And even though I might be setting up that compass heading with whatever point combination I'm doing, your body, your mind, your spirit is going to run that program, even though I'd love to take credit for it. Like it's and that's why I do step out of the room while people get a treatment, because I want that privacy and that mystery that happens during an acupuncture treatment, which is nothing short of a miracle, like it's really incredible. But yeah, static is the main thing that I want to keep saying tonight. Internal wind and static is released. It's defragmenting the hard drive, something like that, clearing away the physical and mental static, right? And it could be back pain or shoulder pain or whatever it is, or it could be that, your dog just died or something, and I hope your dog's still alive. But the static is cleared out as the main thing. And the nervous system is rebooted and rebalanced, and a sense of stillness, I think, is another key word, which is the opposite of static in a lot of ways. Static implies sort of like a stuckness, a stagnancy. And I want to relate static to trauma, because trauma has many different faces. And I was just thinking tonight about the 7 emotions. And one of the emotions I really never got, I'll be honest with you, was oppression. I was like, yeah, okay, oppression, and it could be translated different ways, but that's the main way it's translated in the books that I use. And oppression is said to, there could be, sadness that's full of oppression. There could be anger that's full of oppression. There could be worry that's full of oppression. It's any sort of stuckness or trauma that's related to any emotion for that matter. It could be joy for that matter that's just stuck, that's not letting itself out. And I think that's the real message tonight for me, or your morning rather, is that static needs to be vented and let go. And it's sort of like getting a boat on the right compass heading, and the body remembers how to get on that right compass heading. And I will say, this was by Greg Bantic, who we both love.
Mhm.
Greg Bantic said many years ago in Theory 3 class, or whatever we were in, he said, acupuncture is very forgiving.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important point to pass on to practitioners. That you should have a good technical skill and be caring and all that stuff, but overall it's very forgiving.
I love that. I love forgiving. I love almost like self-correcting. And I really love, and this is something that drew me to the medicine all those years ago, is that it's a catalyst for the body to heal itself. None of us are the healers. So it takes some of the weight off of us, like, oh, they didn't get good results, it's my fault. Like, maybe not, but it is just reawakening the body's own knowledge of healing itself, putting itself in balance. I've never heard anybody use the static. I love that analogy as well, or that metaphor, that it's venting the static. And then when you define static are those stuck traumas, the oppression, the 7 emotions, and allowing that to vent out. If you've ever heard the interview with Zach Bush, Dr. Zach Bush talks about his first acupuncture session, and it was the same thing. It just took him to a different dimension. He said the dimensions that he had reached during transcendental meditation and so forth. So he kind of shares the same experience and insight on what happens during an acupuncture treatment. And I think a lot of people still wonder. I know, even for myself, having practiced for so many years, I still tap into that awe, that like, wow, I can't believe like the miracles that we're witness to. Even I still can be witness to miracles in the treatment sessions. Like, wow, I didn't even know that was possible. It almost taps into the infinite, right? And it doesn't matter how long you've practiced, you can still be witness to these miracles and still be just so overwhelmed by the profoundness of the medicine and what it can do. In fact, I love it.
Okay, here's a foolish story. You want a foolish story? I
would love a foolish story.
Yeah. So I spleen 1, right? Don't say any more. Spleen 1. I call a student of mine in New York who's this lovely Afghani lady, and she's Afghani American. And I said, hey, Lita, sorry, Lita, if I use your name. I said, hey, Lita, what's spleen 1 for? She said, oh, well, stop bleeding, right? And of course, we all know that's for stop bleeding. Now, this is the foolish part. 20-something years of practice, did I ever use spleen 1 for stop bleeding? No. Did I ever actually believe that spleen 1 could stop bleeding? No. Now, here's the personal part. My wife's pregnant, two months pregnant with Bobby inside. 1 a.m. She starts bleeding a lot. And we're about to get in an ambulance and go to the hospital. And I said, whoa. I got this acupuncture point, spleen 1. I've never used it. And thank goodness my wife agreed. And I needled spleen 1 at 1 a.m. 15 minutes later, stopped. And that's not the only example, but I'll cut it short there. But I've used spleen 1 on myself and a number of times to stop bleeding, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Spooky story.
Well, yes, and it reminds us. I mean, it's such a vast medicine. I do that with herbs quite often. I'm really good about supplements. I'm really good about living a very healthy lifestyle. And every once in a while, I'll have a health issue come up. And I find that it's kind of like the cobbler's kids don't have shoes. My last resort is herbs. And just recently I had another bout of pneumonia, did the antibiotics begrudgingly, but definitely needed them. And it wasn't going away. And I all of a sudden, just like you, like, hey, wait, I know an amazing herbalist. What if I called my herbalist? So I call the herbalist, I get the herbs. Within 24 hours, it's cleared up. I'm like, what?
I don't think, yeah, no, I think that's a great story, because I don't think that acupuncture is known for mental health, and I don't think it's known for treating colds and flu, as an example, right? Like, I think shoulder pain, back pain, like, we get it, right? Maybe sleep or something like that. But, there's, somebody once said a long time ago, like, I feel like an ant standing on an elephant's back, maybe it was you. And it's true. It's so true. And it's one of the things I love about it is that, it is this endless mystery that's wonderful, and connection to the infinite is really incredible as well. I got another funny story for you. You ready for it?
Absolutely.
So years ago, I was treating this Chevron executive over here, and he came in with neck pain and everything else. And I decided to needle Bladder 65 on him, right? Now, I never really used Bladder 65 much, but something was drawing me to that point. I don't know what, right? So next time he came back, he's like, my neck's great, blah, blah, blah. And then, I started using it on myself after my TBI, my traumatic brain injury. Yes. And I was amazed. And then to even punctuate this story even better, and I've been passing it on to acupuncturists in the States and acupuncturists around here and whatnot, because I think we tend to think of like, oh, neck pain, put a couple points on the neck, which is okay, right? But it's sort of icing, I would say, and I like icing, don't get me wrong. But I want a little bit more meat. Not meat necessarily, but you know what I mean, substance. And I started using Bladder 65 over and over again and passing along. And then the end of the story is this. I'm talking with a student of mine in Montauk, New York. And I said, I'll call her Mary. Mary, I said, Mary, don't you get it? We're living in Bladder 65 times. And she's like, whoa, that's heavy. Bladder 65 times. But I meant it. And I still mean it. I think the world is so windy, wobbly, staticky, scrolling, this, that, and the other thing. There's a lot going on. And I think Bladder 65 is a great point for fright. It's a great point for terror. It's a great point for expelling wind. It's a great point for neck, crickety necks, acute back pain. It activates the whole channel. And of course, the bladder line is the longest line in the body. So a point way out by the little toe it's like throwing a pebble into a pond, There's these waves of energy that goes all the way up along the channel. So yeah, I promised myself I wasn't going to get too detailed with you tonight, but here we are.
No, I'm glad you did, because I've been having this neck thing recurring, and I'm like, I'm going to go do Bladder 65 on myself. And I
just did it before getting on this Zoom call.
Right. It's like, and like you said, we're in an environment that's calling for Bladder 65. Wow. I mean, it almost brings me back to your Paul Stamets comment from 25 minutes ago, because he is heavily into mushrooms, all sorts of them. And I definitely feel that mushrooms they appear when humanity needs them, and they disappear when we do not. And I feel that like right now, mushrooms, microdosing, all of that, not to take this on a tangent, but real quick, it's like, it's so prevalent at the farmer's market. There's a mushroom vendor, and he's got the special ones in the back. You just have to ask. And I feel like because I'm a mom, and I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and all the moms talk about that they microdose. It's like the Valium of today, right? It's like, oh yeah, of course I microdose. Like, don't you? And like, it's like, it's like the trendy thing. I just think it's interesting. but I've never thought to myself that an acupuncture point is like what I recognize in mushrooms, that the world brings this modality, this healing modality out when it needs to be. And so it's perfect that you're bringing this up, because whoever listens to this, I am confident that somebody is going to listen to this that was meant to be reminded of the power of UB65. Use it in practice. Talk about a ripple effect. Use it in practice. And like the butterfly effect, change lives. I mean, infinitely. Just from that little conversation and incorporating UB65.
Yeah, that's why I bring it up. I mean, I really, it's a fantastic point. I mean, I've gone way beyond Miriam Lee's 5 grades. I love them, don't get me wrong, but Bladder 65 has a special place in my heart. And I've heard from many acupuncturists in the States that they're using it now and they're getting great results, which is what we all want, right? I will say this, though. East Heritage, that my brother in New York was having like neck pain and back pain and shoulder pain. I said, "Oh, go see the local acupuncture. They got to be good, right?" So he goes. So he goes down to the local acupuncturist, and they cup him and they give him the marks, and they do points, gallbladder 20 and this, that, and the other thing. And, he left in more pain than he arrived. And I'm almost confident that if he would have done like bladder 40 and bladder 65, or, treated away from where the traffic jam is, where the wind is locked up, where the static is locked up, and it's like a traffic jam, right? You go away from where the problem is and you let it flow. You create that flow state for the person.
Yeah. Well, clearly who we went to is practicing the branch style of Chinese medicine. So when we can go back to the root style and the holistic approach to it, the way it was designed, following the seasons. I mean, there's so many layers, not only just following the seasons, there's a lot of astrology-based practitioners out there that will do your astrology and overlay that onto a treatment session. I mean, it's infinite. It's awesome. And so you bring up a point. I mean, you had said that it doesn't necessarily depend, the treatment outcome doesn't necessarily depend on the protocol. As long as the practitioner has care, there will be an effect. And I do agree with that. I remember years ago, one of your roommates, Bill, and we used to trade. And so it was my turn for a treatment session, and I was stressed out. It was back in those days. I was studying for our finals, last year of school. And I came for my treatment, and I was fit to be tied. I was angry. So I sit down and I just go on a rant for about 45 minutes. And you remember Bill, he's just so sweet, just like, and just holding that space for me so well, just listening, and I'm processing and I'm venting. And afterwards I just went, all right, I'm ready for my treatment. And he goes, "Your treatment's over, my friend." And
That's so Billy.
He taught me. I said, "Well, aren't you going to put some needles in me?" He said, "Do you feel better?" I said, "I feel so much better." He said, "We moved your chi. You don't have to put needles in to move somebody's chi. You're a facilitator, right?" And so I share that with students and practitioners as well, because some practitioners feel like they got to get their money's worth. I got to make sure I give them enough needles. It's like, honestly, they'll pay you more for less needles, because people aren't coming to you for the number of needles you use. It's more, they're there for that release of the static, the venting, the transformation that occurs, and just holding that space for them. And so oftentimes just listening is the treatment in itself. I also was at symposium last year, and a colleague shared with me a story that he followed this master TCM practitioner for years. And he was in the room feeling a pulse of somebody, and he heard the footsteps of the practitioner turn to come towards the room, and he felt a difference in the pulse. So what he shared with me, his point was that the intention of the master practitioner had shifted from the other room to the room he was going to go in, and that patient in the room, and it affected the pulse of the patient, just his intention of coming into the room. And you and I both know that that's real. That's a real thing. We're witness to it. We experience it. Call it woo-woo, call it what you want, but I do believe in it. I do believe that even just that intention can help vent static with a really practiced, skilled practitioner that has done the work on themselves to be a larger channel, a larger conduit of the etheric love and light healing energy that's out there, right? I'm sure you have stories around that too.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stories. We're intermediaries, right? That's all we are, and hopefully we're caring, technical intermediaries. I was training these young TCM docs out on the other end of town, and I said, look, when you feel the pulse, it's part of the treatment. I said, I know you want to judge and say, oh, this is wiry, this is slippery, the kidney, blah, 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 whatever it is. I don't really care. But I said, before you judge, just sit there and really feel it and try not to make a judgment, because that's part of the treatment. And we all know as practitioners, if you say, oh, you're pretty stressed, then that will change the pulse even more, right? I mean, whatever we say about the pulse in judgment, good or bad for that matter, will change it. Yep. So yeah.
So many awesome stories. What other stories do you have for us? Or going back to the question of what wisdom are you going to be passing down to your son, which sounds like you already are. It sounds like he's an old soul like you, and already at 5 years old, kind of getting some of this wisdom. What other pearls do you share with him and your students and your patients?
I'm going to think that I think with my son, I would say that he hasn't had an acupuncture treatment yet at 5 years old. I'll probably do 4 gates on him at some point for his first thing, but he's too scared of it. And as I always say to people, I say, when you're getting a hypodermic, it's hollow. It's designed to cut you, and it's much bigger, and it's designed to cut you, whereas an acupuncture needle is sort of like a pen going into a bowl of noodles. Sorry, a chopstick going into a bowl of noodles, right? It's solid. A pen is hollow, but a chopstick is solid, and it sort of pushes aside the tissue, and then your connective tissue or your C fibers, your nerve cells grab it, and then it does its work. I'm mostly sort of semi-retired, and I'm okay with that. I don't really plan on moving around as much. I'm trying to be the best husband and best dad I can be. And, when different opportunities come up or people fly in from Hong Kong or whatever else, I'm honored. I'm absolutely honored. I just had this Turkish woman who I treated in 2006 for the first time. And then through the wonders of the internet, she tracked me down and said, oh, will you come down to the Oriental Hotel and treat me at the hotel? I said, yeah, it's a long way from where I'm at, but I'll do it because, that just the fact that you remember it so fondly. And that reminds me of something else. Long ago, when I was teaching, I think Eastern Nutrition or something like that at PCOM, New York, which was not my strength, Eastern Nutrition, I wouldn't say. Dampness maybe strength of mine, but I said how long does a treatment last, right? And someone said in the back of the class, forever. And I think there's something to that. I really do. In fact, at the end of a treatment now, when I treat people for the first time, I say, try to remember how you feel right now. Before I started talking, just remember that feeling and carry it with you, because you can get back into that state by yourself. Yes, the needles are like expressways to that state, which is wonderful, but there's something to it. Yeah.
I love that. I've never thought of that either. That's a different perspective, that a session or treatment lasts forever. I usually say, if you treat the same person 5 times, that's considered 5 cases, because that
Yeah.
person is a completely different person the next time you see them. So that would kind
To
of
me,
fall in
to me,
line with that.
yeah, to me, it's like peeling back layers of an onion,
Yeah.
right? And your first treatment is like the big peel, and then everything else is like getting that boat on the compass heading. And your body remembers that compass heading. It knows how to get right back in line in terms of, and it may be more resistant to different points, whatever, blah, 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 but it inevitably will get back on that line, which is wonderful,
It is
which is
wonderful.
really wonderful.
So you said you just dropped that you're semi-retired. So, but it sounds like you're still practicing. What
I am.
talking about a compass, where are you pointed? Where are you going? What's the direction? 2024 is right around the corner. Do you have
You want me to
some
reveal my
plans?
secrets, huh?
Yeah, whatever secrets you want to reveal.
That's very well said. Well, I'm very interested in microsystems. I'm very interested in microsystems. I'm especially interested in the microsystem of the face and the scalp. And I've been developing a treatment for over 15 years now, and I offer it when I go into different resorts, called facial acupressure. And instead of using my hands, I use a probe, a point probe, on the face. And I find that we are all electromagnetic and we're all radiating, or maybe not so radiating, but but that wind comes up to the scalp and the face and is released. And I feel like, other than my son, which is the big legacy in a lot of ways, I feel like that treatment of facial acupressure is something I want to get out there. And so it's not just me doing it, that there are many, many people doing it.
I
Yeah.
love that. And so what is the desired outcome for is it rejuvenation? Is it correction? Is it because it's a microsystem, you treat the face to treat the whole body? Is that,
No, just the face.
and so
Just
the
the face.
outcome is like
And
youthful appearance, reversing the aging process?
well, let me see. I'll do a face like this. If I, if you're holding, the face is where tension accumulates, right? For whatever reason, and it could be conscious or unconscious. And I think we're all sort of vibrating in here because this is the upper burner, right? Which is supposed to be a mist, and there can be a lot of phlegm interfering with all that stuff. And I think by using a pointed metal tool on the points around the face, especially points like, and I'm just going to give 2 examples, like bladder 2 and gallbladder 14, and then a lot of points on the side, because when you think about the side of the head, that is the edge of the body, right? And it's the edge of our feelings. It's Xiao Yang, it's spring, like it's all that stuff. And I think by using that pointed tool, that pointed magnetic tool on the face, it allows the body to relax, and it lets the wind really quickly out of the body. And the body, there's no diagnosis, there's no contraindications. And I treated a very prominent person in the spa world over here recently, and within 2 minutes, she was doing what I call the dolphin breath, which is like, she was doing this, she was out. She was out, 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 out. And it was wonderful. And that is very common with that treatment. Very, very common, which is great. And I hope to get it out there. I want, like Bladder 65, I want what has worked for me to be tried by others. And I hope it works for others, but that's their decision.
I love it. I love it. So it sounds like the facial acupressure microsystem treatment session overall balances the entire body. It helps to vent that static. So it can be its very own treatment in and of itself. So you
Yeah.
have a vast experience as a professor and educator. how do you think you're going to deliver and share this gift with everybody? Are you going to create a course about it, a book?
I'm talking with several people in the spa world over here, and one woman in South Africa, and one person in Bali, and a couple other people. And I think what will probably happen is I'll go into different resorts and train the spa team in it, and then, let them go with it. So yeah, that's part of the plan. That's part of the big plan, I'd say.
I love it.
You
So,
know,
okay, anybody listening that wants to learn more, how can people stay in touch with you? I imagine that after listening to this, I've known you for years. I've had the privilege, but many people might be new to you. How can they stay connected to what you're doing, what you're up to, if they're more interested? Do you have is it a website?
yeah, I
Is
have
it...
a website. I'd go to my website, which is very easy to remember. It's www.spatcm.com. spatcm.com. And go to the media tab, and that's where a couple podcasts of mine are, and different articles I've written for Spa China magazine, one on rest that took me over a year to write that article on rest. There's a good sidebar in an article about earth. I have an article on each of the 5 elements, and the sidebar about dampness. It took me a long time to write, but I want to make this medicine available. Like, I want to make it not so, oh, I'm so G deficient. Oh, I'm so, all these kind of words, which is fine and worth, but I think we need to make it plain speak for people, so it's not so foreign, to them. I never thought that I'd be getting up in front of 300 Chinese people at a time and giving a lecture about rest, or sweat, or any number of other things that I've lectured the Chinese on. I mean, it's weird. I'm some editor from Spa China magazine flew over to Bangkok to check out the white guy to see what he had going on or not going on, and she decided, like, he has it going on. So that's how it happened, and I'm utterly thankful for her, and she's a good friend still, which is great.
I love it. You know what that sounds like? You're in the river.
I'm trying, East. I'm trying.
You're not going against it. You're going with it. I love it. So, what would be any final parting words or wisdom that you'd want to share for people listening in?
Don't do what you enjoy, but enjoy what you do.
I'm gonna have to noodle that for a while. I definitely go after what I enjoy. And I try to enjoy what I do as well, right? I do both.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
Right.
But, I mean, but I think, like, nobody likes needling Bladder 65. I don't necessarily like needling it, but I like the effect, and I'm very interested in this idea of dealing with trauma with acupuncture. I am fascinated with it. And I just went down to a beachside town here in Thailand to treat a family that had a very tragic episode. And I don't even want to go into it, but they were so thankful because I released the wind, like I vented that wind that was bouncing around in them like a pinball machine. And I was so thankful to have them as friends, because they really are friends, and nice Thai family, and to be of service, right? And that's what we really want to be. But we want to be of service with care. And I think that's my ultimate message, is that don't forget about the care practitioners.
Right. And enjoy what you do. Like, be of service in a state of joy. It's more potent that way.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. I mean, any monkey in a tin hat can needle do 20 or whatever, like, it's not, it's, but it's how we do it,
Right.
It's how we do it. And people get that. In fact, I just had, for some reason, and this is going to sound weird, I just had this rash, not like an itchy rash. I had this flood of pastors coming to me. pastors. And I'm used to being the white guy with Asian people looking at me saying, wait a minute, you're a white guy doing Chinese medicine. And I'm also used to white people looking at me like, wait a minute, Chinese medicine, like, what's that? But now this added layer of pastors is like another whole layer of scrutiny. But I'm so thankful that they trust me enough to treat them and that they're getting good results. That's the bottom line. So
I love it. More examples of you're in the river. You're showing up and the river's bringing you pastors. And there's going to be lessons on both sides. You're showing them, educating them what is possible, and they are doing the same for you.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. My friend, I'm so grateful for you and what you're doing in the world, in our field. I would love to have you back in the next few months and talk about what I call PJs, your purpose, your passion, your joy, what brings you more joy, purpose, and passion, and that little sneaky S called service. So, but for now, I'd like to call this a wrap. And again, just express my gratitude for you sharing this wisdom with everybody. Again, if you want to connect with Ken, www.spatcm.com. I'll have that in the notes. And until we
go to the media tab,
Go to the media tab.
That's where all the, yeah.
Yep. We've got articles. There's so much in there. So with that, I'll say bye for now. And until we see you again.
East, thanks so much. It's great to see you.
Bye, friend.